So I'd like to welcome Dr. Jimmie Lenz of the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke University, a member of the board of directors of the Zen Blockchain Foundation. Welcome, Dr. Lenz.
Thank you very much, Spencer. It's great to be here. It's always nice to have an opportunity to, one, participate in projects like Horizen, but also because it fits in so much with my academic interests and my personal interests. And the Horizen I've followed since the inception, and so it's great to be able to not only keep interacting with the community, but also to see all the dynamic things happening in the environment. I'm really fortunate at Duke. I run two of the graduate programs at the engineering school. One, the Master of Engineering in Financial Technology, and one is a Master of Engineering in Cybersecurity. So both of those kind of have or can have a little bit of a blockchain component. And so I actually teach blockchain in the FinTech graduate program. And then let's see, in first week of February, Coursera is going to be offering a master track also in blockchain. And it's modeled very closely on the course that I teach at Duke in that subject. So for a lot of reasons, a lot of the things that are happening at Horizen and honestly in the blockchain community are very keenly a very keen interest to me, and also my students. One of the things that I've been really impressed with is how many students are coming to this graduate program, and most of them have an undergraduate degree in engineering or computer science, some in economics, econometrics, applied math, that kind of thing. But they're coming and they're saying, I want to get more into the blockchain space. I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I want to learn more about it. And I'm really interested in understanding, how it fits into kind of traditional finance, how it fits into other traditional industries, and how we might use blockchain to change those, to dramatically change them in some cases. And then it goes beyond blockchain, of course, to cryptocurrency and smart contracts and things like that. And so I think all the things that are being done, within the Horizen community, this is so closely aligned with the interest that I'm seeing in academia and the interest that I'm seeing in industry. And so it's kind of a cool thing to be able to be a part of, a small part of, but it is cool to do that. And the opportunity to interact with Rolf and on a pretty regular basis, as well as with Rob and Rosario. I mean, it's fantastic to be able to do that and kind of hear what they're thinking and how they're reacting to the changes in the environment. And I think it's always important to at least it is for me to understand how leaders in different organizations react to environmental changes. And it's really neat to see how how Rob and Rosario and Rolf and others within the community have done that. So what can I tell you about either what we're doing at Duke or about anything else that is kind of happening?
Well, I'm very interested in what's happening at Duke. I was happening to speak to a graduate student at South Carolina school you're familiar with, and he hit me with said, "Hey, I'm doing some work in Zendu on the sidechains." And I'm saying, that's great. I said, a real live sidechain developer in the flesh right here in Columbia, South Carolina, very hard on the heels of the release of the Zendu SDK. Are you seeing any interest in your Duke students on sidechains and Horizen?
Side chains are definitely of interest, and I think, as I said before, one of the things that students glean onto very quickly are changes in the environment and things that are happening. There's really dynamic things that are happening. So certainly, side chains are something that are of interest. There's always interest in they see how things are proliferating around the world and different applications of blockchain and things like that. And so those are, of course, of interest. And of course, can't ignore the elephant in the room, the fact that, you've seen the valuations of cryptocurrencies just explode in the last few months. Everybody is certainly interested in that and in the whys and in the wherefores and things like that. Will it continue? Will it not? What's behind that? And so yeah, certainly side chains are of interest. Some of the new things that are being done, I think, within communities, within blockchain communities, I receive a lot of questions about. And then, as I said, in cryptocurrencies in general and smart contracts, students are really interested in, how can I take that and take it back to a company, or how can I apply it in in real world situations. And one of the cool things about teaching what I'm teaching at an engineering school rather than maybe a business school or comp sci department is that engineers are really used to building things. All right, everything is hands-on, everything is applied. While there is some theory, we apply the theory very quickly into building different things. And that's kind of the cool thing on when we're talking about blockchain and the community involvement. As you said, you run into a student, who's already kind of experimenting with Zendoo a little bit, which is a really cool thing. But that can happen in this kind of environment. And engineers love to build stuff. I mean, they absolutely love to build stuff. And so pretty much from the first class that students have with me, we're building stuff. We're doing different kinds of things. And I always assure them, you can't break it, so don't worry, you're not going to break the internet or anything like that. And so there's a lot of experimentation that goes on in that space. So there are things that students are certainly looking at, and I think they unlike people that like myself who are a little bit older, they have they don't have the constraints on their thought that I might. So their considerations are much broader, and so when they look at things, like a side chain, their thoughts around applications might be, much broader than mine, because they aren't constrained by, all these years of experience. I know that's a really long answer to your question.
No, thank you, Jimmie. That was exactly this, what I think the folks in the community would like to hear. Since it is the 4th anniversary, or the 4th birthday, if you will, the Horizen project, as we approach block 840,000, which will be their first halving. Do you have any comments on the whole halving model a la Bitcoin that we've adopted? And there's been some talk about possibly changing the coin emission scheme at some point in the future. Some talk. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think halving is it's a natural progression, right? I mean, we know it's a natural progression. It's something that has been out there for almost as long as blockchain. So that the whole notion of that kind of thing is certainly talked about, and now we're starting to see it. We're starting to see it present itself in this way. Probably the more interesting thing to me is, so how will this economically change things? I mean, we know what the theory is, right? We know what the economic theory is around scarcity and things like that. Will it come to pass in that way? Will there be some sense of elasticity that's tested? Will there be some sense of supply and demand that's tested? Will this actually come together the way we expect it to, in theory, or will we see something very different? For me, as someone who looks at things, because one thing I didn't mention, I had a couple of decades in finance and very traditional financial firms prior to my heading into academia, and at primarily brokerage firms and investment banks and that kind of thing. So the idea of asset pricing and the changing of assets and restructuring of assets and things like that is something that's very, very common, very, very much that I'm very, very familiar with. But of course, cryptocurrencies are maybe a little bit different, maybe they're not. And so as we start to see some of this halving take place, are we going to see this follow what we would expect in a traditional economic theory path, or does something new happen? Is there something new that will occur here? And I think it's interesting because we're seeing with fiat currencies, different things starting to occur, and central banks, different things starting to occur. One of the most prolific things that are going on in central banks, and I don't just mean in the United States, this is a global, this is something that's happening globally, is this idea of, central bank digital currencies. How will what we learn when we see halving take place in what I'll call established cryptocurrencies, because hey, as you said, 4 years old, that's almost half the life of half the time since the original paper was published, right? That was only 11 years ago. And so when we think about these changes that are taking place, and the fact that central banks are now anticipating and all starting to look at this, is cryptocurrency going to write new economic laws or new economic theory that'll be applied to what will essentially be digital fiat? So they're setting this halving and things like that is, to me, those are great opportunities to learn a lot. I mean, obviously, it changes the economics of mining. It changes the economics of the currency itself. But what else will it do? Because as we know, we don't live in a vacuum. And the lessons that we learn from this can certainly, we can certainly use those as considerations in other things. And so I like the idea of having, as I said, it's a natural progression, right? It's going to happen at certain periods after a certain amount of activity has occurred. And so because of that, because it is anticipated, it's not going to, hopefully, it won't be some giant shock because it has been anticipated. But it is an interesting thing. As we start seeing more of these kinds of things occur in the cryptocurrency environment, like we did in Forex a generation or 2 generations ago, what'll be the lasting impact? That's the thing that it probably intrigues me more than anything else. And I know a lot of people in the community are probably saying, this guy's like a crazy person, the way he's thinking about it. But I think we do have to look beyond today, beyond tomorrow. We're looking at building communities. We're looking at building, sustainability of certain currencies. Then we have to look down the road. To me, the best chief financial officers and things like that aren't the guys that can manage well quarter to quarter. They're the guys who are managing 4 and 5 years out. And that's what I think we have to be looking at, is stop looking at daily and weekly and monthly, quarterly type, and start looking out the horizon, because that's how you plan for big things, is looking out on the curve a little ways.
Good stuff, Jimmie. Thank you very much for being with us. Take care.
Okay, take care. Thank you very much.